Drake, what's been reported is the agreement that the ACC may come to with Florida State and Clemson is that they may lop some of the years off of the grant of rights penalties. They may let them basically get out a little earlier, and they're going to increase the revenue. Now, they've already done this through success initiatives, but they're going to increase the potential revenue for the bigger brands. Florida State maybe pulls in more eyeballs. Miami starts to win. Clemson pulls in more eyeballs. UNC's brand with Belichick. Maybe those teams have an opportunity to earn more money. That's great if you look at the football that's up over my shoulder right now, right? That's really good for me. We make more money. It catches us up with the big boys a little bit. Getting out of the conference, maybe not the win we thought it would be. But is that really good for college football in general? Because what happens when Dion go, and it wouldn't be Coach Pride, but like what happens when Colorado goes to the Big 12 and says, hey, you see what they're doing over in Charlotte? We get better ratings than the rest of the conference combined some weeks. Like, I think we deserve a bigger piece of the pie. And then I've spoken with some Big Ten folks. They don't really think this is realistic. But what happens when Michigan says that? What happens when Georgia says that and Texas says that? And I'm stealing this from Pate. I will give the credit there because he's the one that thought of this. But I don't necessarily know that that's a great thing for college football. And the problem it fixes for Florida State, if it goes through, suddenly becomes a problem again if everybody else starts making more money because Michigan gets more eyeballs and Texas gets more eyeballs and Colorado gets more eyeballs. So I don't know. What were your thoughts on this, specifically with the Big 12, but just college football in general?
Morgan Wallen said it best in that one song. It's like trying to put a Band-Aid on a bullet hole. What you are doing is there's already what's outfighting. Infighting, the opposite's outfighting. There's outfighting in college football where the Big Ten and the SEC are competing against each other, and the Big 12 and the ACC, we're all comparing numbers and dollars and revenue and all that. We are always going to argue with one another and try to one-up you. What happens when we allow teams, schools, to do that within their conference? Like, yeah, more people watch you, your colors are prettier, we're going to give you more money. What that's doing is it is making a Wake Forest, at NC State, a school like maybe even a Miami, if they get buried behind Clemson and Florida State in this new like revenue algorithm. It is ticking them off to the point they're not going to want to do that anymore, and they're going to take action against the conference. Like, hey, we signed a grant of rights, but this feels a little like you're going to take money away from us and give it to them. That's not what we signed up for. You're creating, when all these contracts are reworked in 2031, such a crap storm. Oh my God, close, TJ. A crap storm there amongst ACC schools to the point where they're going to leave, where there will be so much infighting that the bigger schools are more likely to leave. This is a temporary solution to a problem that is a long-term solution. And what you're doing temporarily is only going to hurt you in 4 years. This isn't we'll figure it out somewhere down the line. No, but 2030 is coming up. These conversations, when we start determining who's going to be here and who's not, that's coming up. You can't just, sure, you'll have a couple years to try to figure it out now that you know what's going to happen, but why wouldn't you have strived for something big, something long-term? Let's hold it all together till 2040. No, the ACC said, we just need to buy some time here. We'll give you all the money you want. Please stick around for a bit. When you're eligible, when ESPN wants it, then they're going to go out the door, and everybody else is going to be ticked. Everyone else is going to be upset. So the SEC, right? As much as we hate the SEC, the Big Ten, as much as we rag on the Big Ten, they pay Illinois as much as they pay Ohio State. Mm-hmm. They pay Vanderbilt and Mississippi State as much as they pay Alabama and Georgia when it comes to TV revenue. They don't build this little, special gold star system where subjectively you were the bigger brand school, here's more money. The second you do that, you kill off any chance you had at surviving long term.
Yeah, I think about so many things. And then, again, as a Florida State guy, right, like if this is what happens, we have an opportunity to maybe, have our cake and eat it too, right? Get more money now and then leave the ACC in the dust in 2030, 2031 and not have to think about it again. Like, who cares if they hate us when we're gone? But I do think about, just from a big picture perspective, you're spot on. You've experienced some of this with the way that the Big 12 hated Texas and hated the way that they were given maybe special consideration. And then I think about it from the other perspective too. And I spoke with some guys on the Big Mountain podcast about this. And they said, I don't think that Ohio State and Michigan would do this because there's such a camaraderie. There's such a pride in the Big Ten. And I know that really exists in the SEC too, especially around the fans. They're the worst at it. But there's such a pride within the Big Ten of, no, we take care of each other and we're proud of our research institutes and we're proud of what we are as a conference. And we do things that are beneficial to the least of these, right? To go biblical for 2 weeks in a row. I do think that there's a benefit of that. And it's why they make new members take a lesser share, right? With Oregon and Washington at times. And they have programs that are really bought into, no, you're coming in here to be part of what we're building, not we're going to give a little more here and take a little from here. And so again, I can see both sides, right? Like I as a Florida State guy, very much not going to complain about this. But again, don't think that it's great for college football in general.
It's not. It's a precedent you're setting here that if other conferences adopt it, you're going to create infighting in different leagues that ultimately leads to what many have called inevitable, and that's a Power 2 or a Power 1 and breaking away from the NCAA. There are so many options, and we are inching closer and closer to 2030 where we'll know so much more when the ESPN contract, when the Fox contract, when a lot of these with their respective conferences will expire. Then we'll see, will the Big 12 exist with TNT, and will they give BYU more money than they give Cincinnati? If that's the case, Cincinnati's not happy with that. What will BYU be willing to do? How greedy are these universities going to be? We know that Clemson and Florida State wanted a lot more money. They're going to get a lot more money out of this. If you're an ACC fan, you shouldn't like this. If you're a college football fan, you shouldn't like this. If at the micro level, you're a Florida State fan, this is great for your university. And if you're a fan of Florida State not being in the ACC, this is really good news for you. Because here in a few years, the price tag is going to drop lower and lower for them to exit. So, like I said, we're all just we're hurtling toward death. There's nothing you can do to escape it. It's going to happen to all of us one day. It is going to happen to the ACC at some point as well, based on the decisions they're making. They're trying to appease the big brands, and when you do that, you start cutting off the schools that are also making you money, the schools that are doing it in auxiliary sports, the schools that are making up what the ACC is. So, TJ, overall, not good for college football. We are setting a new tone that, to me, is going to put the entire sport in a very bad place very soon. And it's Jim Phillips that's made that decision as the commissioner of the ACC. I think we could point back to today, this week, this time period as when the biggest of the dominoes, I don't think it's the first one, but the biggest of the dominoes really came crashing down and brought the entire league to not a screeching, but a fairly steady halt. Yeah.
I also think about, and I wonder about the aspect of this, of if it did happen in the Big 12. How insane, and I know the hype bubble is not quite where it was at the beginning of 2023, but just how insane Colorado's payouts would be at this moment in time with Deion Sanders, how insane maybe some of the North Carolina stuff might get with Bill Belichick there and people wanting to see that. Again, we just kind of crapped on this idea for 7 or 8 minutes, but I do think about, are people in Boulder thinking, short term, we'd kind of like this. Like, short term, we wouldn't hate this right now if this was to happen. You mentioned BYU obviously does really well in ratings too. But then, like you said, Cincinnati, not going to love it, right? There are some programs in here that'd be like, oh, heck no, we ain't doing that. So, yeah, I think about some of the teams in different conferences, different programs that would be like, yeah, sign me up tomorrow. And then others that'd be like, nah, man, this is not fair. This is not what we signed up for when we came over from the American.
Yep, they'll love it until they're really bad at football for a couple of years. And then they'll hate it all over again.
Yeah, it makes it a lot tougher. So, Drake, where can people follow you? Where can they find your work, bud?
At LO Big 12, at Drake C. Toll on Twitter and wherever you find your podcast, and YouTube with Locked On Big 12.